if you break it down to something really simple, there's great designers and then there's great clients. But I could be a great designer and I can have a bad client. And it will not be a successful project because if the client holds us back from being creative and suggesting and driving them in a manner that really suits the home, then it's a lost cause and it's more of a frustrating experience. And the exact same goes for you can have a great client and that client can hire a bad designer and that client isn't going to get what they want. So it's truly magic when all of a sudden you put two working synergies together that are out for the same goal.
Welcome to Titans of Trade. I am your host, Constance Dunn, and today we have a designer of furniture, of interiors, and much more. Welcome, Shelley Starr.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know, it's really funny. Have you ever flown to South America to personally pick out a slab of wood?
Yeah, I have actually. I
Tell
used
us
to spend a
about it.
great deal of time in Brazil picking a lot of the wood, especially when we did a lot of the reclaimed and petrified woods on furniture years ago. I've kind of evolved out of that. In the last 10, 12 years, it was kind of a thing where it was a big fad. And then it was far more complicated and difficult between how much was available, all the regulations, and then shipping for that matter. So, and then obviously design, you can only do it so many times and you're like, I got to move on to something different.
Right. Enough. It's interesting because I read about that because this is going back a little bit, but you designed a custom bar for the Don Julio brand.
Yeah.
I mean, this is okay.
This is going way back.
Right. But I find it interesting because you also did this Esquire apartment for Esquire magazine that was filled with Hugo Boss accessories.
Yeah.
That was extraordinary. And so I'm curious about how these kind of partnerships or collaborations came about.
I'm curious too. Sometimes I think it's a case of being in the right place at the right time. It's you get a phone call and you think, really? I'm who you want? Like all the designers out there? Okay, let's do it. And they ask you to come in and pitch what your concepts will be. And I think they pull in a lot of, different designers to pitch their concept, especially when you're working with somebody like Hugo Boss, and Don Julio. You've got heads on these company and they're very particular. They've got a look and something that they want. So, you've got to really kind of placate to exactly what they're looking for and their brand and be conscientious of that. So
yeah.
Great experience though. So, I mean, fantastic building, it was in Dumbo, in the clock. I mean, a really iconic building with these 4 huge clocks in the space, everything about it was, just spectacular, right down to all the parties.
Right. And so getting there, like you're saying, being at the right place at the right time, like what do you think put you in the right place at the right time? I mean, not just for those, but other subsequent like successes.
I think that I'm very lucky. I've worked with unbelievable clients over the years and from the get-go in my career, and I think it's word of mouth. I think my name travels around, with in groups, very specific groups. I know that I had worked with a client in Beverly Hills and had done their house in Beverly Hills Estate. And I know he had a very tight connection with Esquire. And I have a feeling he threw my name into the basket because, it's never me throwing my name in. I get the phone call and it's like, oh, okay. I've never had that personality that's been like, I've heard of this job, I'm going after it. It's just not my style. I'm more, you'll reach out to me and if we're a great fit, we're a great fit. And otherwise, it's not for me to go pursuing something. People know what they want. They know who what they're looking for, and it is design. It would never behoove me to go pushing in and say, I'm the person for this job. I just don't design interior design that way at all. So.
And I love this approach. It really flies in the face of a lot of the like hustle, visualize, manifest, go for it, grind, chase people down in the street. I'm being hyperbolic, but you get the idea. It's a
Yeah.
very different approach.
I, I
Have
think that it is. I also think it's a reason why my firm has stayed smaller and I'm much more a boutique firm. I've never been one that's gung ho for a lot of work. I've always kind of operated off of the synergy and the concept of less is more. But I've had a premise. Oh, I'm so sorry. I think one of the key successes for me and why I've been able to do this for so long and what I really enjoy about it is if you break it down to something really simple, there's great designers and then there's great clients. And that's where you get these unbelievable projects that really go places, and they turn into these spectacular things. But I could be a great designer and I can have a bad client and it will not be a successful project because if the client holds us back from being creative and suggesting and driving them in a manner that really suits the home, then it's a lost cause and it's more of a frustrating experience. And the exact same goes for you can have a great client and that client can hire a bad designer and that client isn't going to get what they want. So it's truly magic when all of a sudden you put two working synergies together that are out for the same goal. And as odd as that sounds, it's actually a very rare thing that happens. More often than not, you've got one party that's not coming to the table with what they need to come to the table with. So I've always sat back and thought, I interview my clients and make my decision as to whether I'm working for them. And, my office has a good chuckle because we turn down anywhere from 15 to 20 jobs a year because they're just not the kind of jobs I want. If it's not going to bring
right.
happiness and I can't be who I am and be as creative as I want to be, then I'd rather spend time traveling or being with my daughter. But on the exact same note, I've been extremely fortunate. Like I said, I'm always busy. There's
Yeah.
always a big job on the board or multiple jobs. So
Right.
I'm always
And
on the.
the boundaries they sound really wonderful because you have a sense you want everything to work out. Now, how do clients get what they want when they're working with you? Because you're talking about this synergy. So how does this synergy work ideally? What
Well,
should,
I think it starts from the initial one. How do we communicate? How well do we start communicating with one another? I'll sit down in meetings and we better have a lot of humor because if we're not laughing, then when shit hits the fan and things get difficult, it's not going to be fun.
uh-huh.
If somebody's too serious or a little too uptight, then I know, hey, how are we going to move along? Because I think I'm damn funny. I like to come with a lot of humor. I know that there's going to be, disasters and accidents on jobs. And it's like, okay, that sucked. What are we doing next? How are we fixing this? How are we moving on? Because we're not perfect.
Uh-huh.
And design
Yeah.
is about making mistakes and discovering how that melds into the grand scheme and how are we living with it, or maybe more often they're really happy mistakes that turn out fantastic.
Right,
So
right. Yeah. Maybe
so
there's some great,
it starts with those meetings, and how we interact with one another. Do we have the same goals and same values? Are they meticulous? Does the quality of their project, of their home, not project, because to them it's their home, but how do they use their house?
yeah.
I would say 95% of my clients we have the exact same values and goals in life. We're very family oriented. We have kids. And when we're at home, it's where we love, it's where we cook, it's where we entertain, it's where we're passionate. Everything evolves when, around our families and our friends and the people that we love. And so the more we have that, the more successful I know I'll make their projects. So there's a lot, but like I said, I'm a very different designer. I'm not that big firm. I'm a boutique firm. I keep my
Yeah.
costs low. I'm very hyper focused on keeping my expenses down because the more I keep an efficient office, the more my clients' money go into their houses. And I think that's not to be, arrogant or, cocky, but I think that's what shows when you look through my body of work. I'm not cookie cutter. I'm everything about me is very different, the heightened level of my projects. I don't work on the monolithic homes that are museum like, and a look don't touch, or they're parading their house. I have very different type of clientele, and thank God I do, because I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a great flow in the way you work. And I think it's really, I'm so glad that you're here to share that with us, because I think it's important for people to see, whether they're designers or homeowners
Yeah.
or where they are. And there's this wonderful flow. And actually, and it's funny because you have that about you as a person.
Oh,
You
thank you.
have a very much an ease. Like, we talked about, we met you many years ago at West Edge Design Fair, and you were just very approachable. Obviously, like your stuff is very beautifully put together, but you're just like, we're like, hey, do you want to talk to us for a minute on camera? And you're like, sure. And you invite us into your space, and you're very like talking to us. And one of the things I remembered about your work, and obviously it's evolved and changed, but something that you said is a constant thread is this quiet, timeless elegance. And
Yeah.
looking at your work online, it's true. There is a quiet, timeless elegance. Like,
Yeah.
where did that come from? The Shelley Starr sensibility. Like, where do you think, if you had to,
I think it comes from, oddly enough, coming from kind of very humble, beginnings. Like I grew up in a very, salt of the earth family. I didn't grow up, wealthy or with a lot of incredible means around me. So, one thing that was, as I started coming in my career and making my way, was when we spend money, spend it wisely. It needs to really count. And so, I'm not a frivolous person by any means. I'm very conscientious. I'm actually somebody who will sit and fight for her clients over, bills. If I think, one of our vendors or a worker, anybody's like taking advantage of us, most designers, and that might sound mean to throw designers under the bus, but most will take the approach, well, a bigger bill is more money to them. That's not my premise. I'm actually in my office, and everyone that works, with me, my girls will tell you they've never heard somebody fight with people as much as I do, because I don't want my clients taken advantage of, because I don't want to be taken advantage of. But I also know the more money I keep on the, to the good, the more the project is going to be enhanced, and we're going to get to those details and all those little nuances that are going to amaze and wow the client when they walk through, versus more of a cookie cutter, basic project.
right.
So, yeah.
So there's this resourcefulness that's not just in the way you run your business, but in the way that you source materials as well. Like
Yes. Yeah.
you travel many places, you have exotic furs, and I think it was like Mongolian fur or something
Yeah.
on a
Yeah. Right.
stool. There's woods from all over the place. What are some of the far out things, or something that you found and you were like, whoa, this is interesting? Like in the Esquire, I know I'm like going on about the Esquire because I was just watching the videos and looking at it, but there
That's
was
funny.
like, you had sourced a club chair from 1930s from
Yeah.
Europe somewhere, and it was
Yeah.
a beautiful piece. It was just like, I kept looking at it. It was so glossy and gorgeous. But anywho,
Yeah.
so back to your exotic materials, and share a few that are just like cool, floated your boat.
I think as interior designers, that's kind of our job, is to find that exquisite little piece, that hierarchy piece that we're obsessed with. And we go, okay, I don't have to spend all my money on this, but it's wonderful when I find that special little thing that stands out, or, even today with how creative and so many things going on, I can put that into just some incredible wallpaper that's hand painted, and you'll see that on some of my jobs coming up. It's so I don't get as caught up, I would say, in looking for too many of those things. but I do want that special material. I want some piece, whether it's art, whatever it might be, that really kind of sets the tone. Like if you were to see behind me, well, you can't, but we found this beautiful, my daughter and I walked into an antique shop, when we were abroad, and we found this painting, and it's, of this drunken dog with an empty Yukon Jack bottle. And we were building a beach house, an 87-year-old beach house that I was fighting with the city to save because they wanted it torn down and I wanted to save it. And so, I was going up against some challenges, in a community that I had gotten caught off guard because I wanted a cottage and they want a new build. But we found this, I'll turn it and you can see there he is back there. Do you see him?
Yes.
Yeah. Does he have anything to do with the beach cottage? Not at all. But I can tell you that we laugh our butts off every time we all walk into the house, and we entertain, and everybody, it's about martini nights here in this cottage. It's always a lot of drinks. It's always a dinner party. There's always something going on. And there's always a good chuckle about that one hierarchy piece in the house. So kind of back around to what you're saying. Yeah, when it comes to sourcing, if it's a vintage sofa or some fabulous coffee table, I'm always looking for something, even pots. I found these extraordinary vintage pots, and I shipped them in for, this beautiful project that we're just starting to wrap up. And, it was just magnificent. And, I've had old fabrics. That's actually how I started my career, was, collecting old fabrics. And I'll take those old fabrics and whittle them into pillows, or, something that takes, and not just kind of a great piece, but it elevates it to something different. Does that make sense? I've even taken old scarves and had them made into beautiful, and framed them beautifully for art. And they're just fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. A hierarchy piece. I love that. So would that be a piece that other things are tied to, or is it what is it?
Yeah, I that's a great question. And here's the thing. When you're designing, you definitely have your hierarchy pieces. You have things that are going to, you start out, what are your weak points? What are you working on? How are you fixing, problems? I'm very lucky because so many of my projects are large. They're monster estates. I've wrapped up a Calabasas, and it's almost 14,000 square feet. And we built a 1,400 square foot master closet just for her on top of all that, so it gives you an idea, right, of how lucky I am and what I get to do. But then you have these projects, that are smaller. Kind of coming back around to what you're saying, the thread when you are picking something like that is there has to be a thread, the story. And, as I developed over the years as a designer, sometimes I would go into the jobs and I wasn't always quite clear about my story, because you have a client wanting one thing, talking to you, and then you're looking at the house and what's really right for the bones of that house. That you got a budget. So you're working against all these different dynamics, not to mention what's going on between the husband and wife. Sometimes you can't even get them to agree, and that gets back to that whole relationship. But coming back through, I like, once I have that story, then it's very easy for me to pick those hierarchy, like in the cottage and showing you this piece. This is a tiny little cottage, it's 3,000 square feet on Balboa Island. Well, it was 2,300 and I took it up to 3,000. But the theme was good time. It was friends are coming in from LA. There's always people. The doors are open. Everybody's welcome for drinks. There's a pizza oven. We're cooking. It's nonstop. So I wanted humor. I want you to walk in and I just want to know how fast do I have a martini or a glass of wine in your hand? And how fast are we getting down to having a good time? And what are the laughs? So there's that thread in this particular job. I have a client, a larger, it comes down to their family, their entertainment, their kitchen. They have very large groups come together, but they want to be outside. So again, those threads of things that you look for are a constant. But when you have a big estate, You can't show up in a 14,000 square foot house and have one hierarchy. You've got multiple hierarchies in each room and area that take you there and drive you into that place, because otherwise you end up with these massive houses, and why go use the space? You got to find those things in every arena of that house so that they look forward to using that room. Does that make sense?
So
I hope I answered.
yeah, so you're storytelling as a designer. You're telling stories. And you've worked a lot in LA, and then there's like New York, Park Avenue. There's also abroad. And were you doing something in like Idaho? I was just on your Instagram a while ago, and there was like
I'm just we're about 80% through on for the last couple of years building a beautiful place in Park City, in Deer Valley, actually, in Talisker, and it's just, oh my God, fantastic. I mean, it started out as a serious pain in my back end, and it's like, I don't know how we're going to do this, but it's evolved into something where, I even took my girls, everyone from the office, we went a couple weeks ago for a nice long weekend, and we never went out anywhere. We just sat at the bar and cooked, and I mean, we never left the unit. It was absolutely pathetic. We thought we were going to ski. We thought we were going to do all these things. And so all of our friends, people that were in town, were like, "You guys aren't showing up, are you?" It was like, "No, you want to come over?" And it was just a constant. So
yeah, you had a list at the end. It just gets crumpled up and thrown over your shoulder.
Yeah. But now they have a great idea of what it's like to travel with me.
Right. And so, the hierarchy, or like the premise, the thread, the main gist of the story at Park City, what would you describe that as being on this project?
Chic, sexy mountain, and how fast are we coming off the mountain for some après drinks?
Okay. I'm curious about something, working out of town, because you've worked in Dubai as well. Like, you've been doing this for a long time. Do you get stressed out when you're not right on the job site? Like, you've got jobs here and there and moving and grooving. Like, what's that like? Like, you're very calm.
I don't think we'd be a designer if we weren't stressed out.
Okay.
No, working in new places, every time you start, the first thing you just think is like, am I prepared to take on how complicated this is going to be? Because you're not with your mainstay crew. You ask me for anything and I can call up and I've got somebody. I know somebody. Even coming through COVID, where I lost a lot of incredible factories and people just didn't make it through. And I remember for a while I sat back and I was like, what does this mean for my career when I've known these men and counted on them for over 20 years, and now they just aren't here with me anymore? This is hard. But I kind of like the game and the process of, okay, who do I know? Who can I call? And before you know it, somewhere I've worked with somebody and I know somebody, and that gets me into a call to that person. And then I rely a lot on, luckily, my reputation. So once I do even call into people that I don't know and I tell them who I am and what I'm looking for, you'd be amazed at how fast people start saying, you need to meet this person. You need to talk to this person. So oddly enough, like how in Deer Valley, I managed to meet all the best of the best that really are on top of their game and helped me bring this huge place, to life it was a fantastic experience. I'm armed and I'm dangerous because, you're Deer Valley, call me again because I know stuff now.
That's cool. And there it goes with like the way that you kind of, that you flow. You turn something that's potentially a stress point to something fun, like, wow, let's find out who let's find new people here. I love the attitude. You mentioned earlier that when the fit is not right, you're not going to take the project on,
Yeah.
So are there tips that you have for saying no elegantly? Sometimes people don't like to hear no, even if they know you're right on all the points. I know this is but you seem like you'd be really good at it.
Actually, there really is. It's about just being kind and being considerate. Like, oh my God, congratulations. I'm so excited for your job. I don't know any, sometimes I may know names or be like, hey, let's look at this area. I can be extremely honest with somebody when they're talking to me and go, I'm not the right fit for you. Your budget is not, you don't want to hire me. You need to hire a junior, somebody a lot less, because you're on a very tight budget. You don't bring in somebody like me, even as efficient as I am. And I love the beauty of doing a beautiful job. So no, I always take time to talk to clients, that are potential people, and show them respect and gratitude for the fact that they even called me, because and I, earlier when we started talking and I said, we turn down over 20 some jobs a year. I don't say that with arrogance. I
Right.
have incredible gratitude and appreciation that these people even call me, and that somehow my name or, my reputation and my work caught their attention, because there are a sea of interior designers. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, in my industry, I think we're a dime a dozen. So how do we separate ourselves? But
Right.
back to
Right.
what you said, is I take time, I talk with them. I usually know pretty fast. Sometimes I'll end up taking a meeting and then figure out we're not right for one another. I have a lot of that. I have people that were just, we had a 3 hour long meeting, and we were really kind of like, is this the right job, in a beautiful beach house here in Newport? And when the husband and I sat and we really talked about how this job was going to roll down, come down, I had to say, interestingly enough, he's got 2 yachts. It's probably, I mean, how much he spends on his yachts is, well, fabulous, but good for him. And, can't wait to be invited on one of them. But his house is not the same priority, And so I looked and I was like, I don't think we're going to be we're the right fit. And he knew too, because he's like, I don't want to spend this much. I think I want some ideas, and I think we'll take this through. But I can also look and recognize and
And
go,
it makes
what an
sense.
amazing couple. And I love them. And we absolutely adored one another. And then we became, we've stayed in touch. And they were here for dinner just a couple weeks ago. They got here at like 5:30 and left at 1 a.m. of how much fun we all had. So here is a
Yeah.
great example of showing consideration, that being considerate and appreciative to the fact that they called me. We got to know one another.
Yeah.
But just because I'm not the right designer, doesn't mean I can't look and go, but we should know one another and be friends,
Oh, I
and
love
develop a
that.
friendship, does that,
Yeah.
do you know
Yeah,
what I'm
I
saying?
love
So
that.
yeah, it,
Yeah.
I think that if you're inherently kind and considerate, it's never a question of how to turn somebody down. I would never ignore anybody, and if I have, it was by accident, or I didn't get a message, or I didn't know, and but
Yeah.
that's just not my demeanor whatsoever,
Yeah.
you know.
And going back to the beginnings of Shelley Starr Designer, what were some projects that you think of when you look at the trajectory of your career that you went, oh wow, this is a game changer, or this is going to usher in a new chapter or a new level of my business? Or there's some that just were like, oh,
You know what? Again, I've had such great luck with amazing projects and working for some incredible people. Um, I remember I had so many beautiful jobs and I was very busy, and I was in heaven, but I was working and moving 100 miles an hour every day. And I decided to take a break, and I was taking my daughter, we were going to Europe, and we were going to be away for a month. And we were spending a couple weeks in Capri. And I had this client call me and say, I want to, oops, sorry. I have a new house, and I've been told that I need to talk to you. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You know what? I'm not going to be, my computer's glitching. Sorry about that. I'm not going to be available for this. And because I'm going to be away. If you can hold, I'll talk to you when I return. And he immediately was like, that's not going to work for me. Make sure I get my phone off. That's not going to work for me because I need to get started on this job right away. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm going away. Long story short, he sends me a message, and we were already in Europe, and he's like, yeah, I've already interviewed 4 people. I met you. We had a meeting, and I just said I'm not going to be available for several months. And he flew to Capri, and he came and met me with a check and handed me a check. Had lunch with my daughter and I, out on the terrace at the Caesar Augustus. And I remember sitting there just going, I don't know when my career hit a point where a client flies to Capri to tell me they're going to hire me and hand me a check while I'm on vacation. And by the way, we couldn't snap those checks and deposit them either at that time. It traveled with me until I came home.
Well,
But that was a big change, where the confidence in me started to adjust and grow into a different place of like, wow, I know I'm thoughtful. I know that I'm hardworking. I know that people see the thread and the quality and the attention to detail in what I do. But that was one of those great things. And, so that was a stage of about 10 years ago, where that really started changing. And then the next big one, oddly enough, was I started taking a break from work because of some choices in life. And I wasn't really quite sure how I was feeling with design. I was trying to reposition and think about my projects. And when it was time for me to go, okay, I'm coming back in, and I put a call in literally to one client, one great client that I had built a beautiful house for years down in Malibu. And I called that client and I said, I need to kind of step my firm back up and get going. And she goes, done. I'm making 3 phone calls today. And I was like, okay. And within literally 4 days, I went on 3 huge calls, and I got every one of the jobs. I ended up turning one of them down, and I took 2 of those jobs, and thank God for her friendship and that family's generosity, and
right.
to look out for me and be like, no, you need to meet this woman. But, coming back into that, it's twofold, because COVID was a really horrible thing that happened. And yet at the same time, it was a driving factor that slowed things down, where I was kind of able to come back in and go, you know what, I've got some things I want to learn. I want to kind of go back in and start exercising the creativity and what design means to me, what my customer service means, how I want to run my projects. And then at the same time, I just was blessed with these unbelievable clients, unbelievable projects. And I went to a whole new level of the best design work I've done in my entire career. And so the last
Wow.
3 years have been just magical. I mean, really, really, I could quit today and I get to I'm in heaven in my head, because I've done so many unbelievable things and created so much beauty and happiness. I mean, and the relationships with the clients because of the work that my firm and I have been doing. And by the way, I want to say it's, Shelley Starr, yeah, that's me. But I've got these girls behind me, and
Yeah.
none of us are just what you see. It takes the synergy and the respect and the collaboration of my team, to make
Yeah.
these things happen. And that's why I
Right.
travel and I try to do everything I can. And I absolutely love my staff and the girls that I have. I have so much respect for
Yeah.
them because they tolerate me on a nonstop basis.
Well, I love how you embrace all these facets. Like, there doesn't seem to be a lot of separation with clients, friendship, work, travel, family. I think this is a really valuable approach. I mean, it's just you living your life, but for an
Yeah.
outsider looking at, like, you're showing how you do something that is different than I would think. And speaking of, I have to ask, because there's obviously, you're a creative, but then there's like a showroom in Newport Beach by the water. There's a business, there's a staff, there's project management. So
Yeah.
Where did you kind of get your business chops or your organizational chops? Is there like this, were you like a paper girl? Was there some kind of background that you have, whether it's traditional or business school or not, that really lends itself to you being able to do what you've been doing for decades, you know?
I think no, you know what it is? The beauty is as we get older, it's experience and it's working hard. And nowhere in my life did I come in with entitlement or, I want instant gratification. I'm happy doing the work. I'm not somebody who's hyper focused. The bank accounts and all that, that is not what's on my mind. I have more than enough in life. And I'm a single mom, who is blessed with, just, I've got a daughter who's the love of my life and a big dog and a lot of friends. And yeah, so I think all those things that you're asking are all things that I've developed and, learned over time of when I made mistakes and owning those mistakes. I'm very much so someone, I screw up, the bill is on me. I had a huge mistake recently on a job. We were so into a beaded wallpaper from Maya Romanoff, but I never considered the weight being a problem. And when it went to my wallpaper installers, we got all the scaffolding and we went to start putting this paper up. It was like, oh my God, we can't keep the paper up. It's not going to hold the ceiling. Back to what you say, it took 5 minutes for me to have a good damn hard laugh about it and go, that's about as dumb as you get. But it happens. And then you pay for the mistake. And you know how you learn? You paid for that mistake. And you move on, and it's like, okay,
Right.
the client, yeah, that bill's not on you. That bill's on me. Where, I tell you that story because it's very honest. It's just things happen, and how do we deal with them as we go into it? So experience, and it's a lifetime of experiences and,
Yeah.
hardships and everything that you can imagine, that you go through as an interior designer. And anyone who doesn't own that, or designers that fight back with clients or even put a client in an uncomfortable position, for me, that's inappropriate,
Yeah.
because they come to you, and I definitely have one big thing that is very key for us. And that is, no matter what the client, how bad things get or what's going on, they're never to have a bad experience through the process. They hired me to shield them from that. So it's like the buck stops with me. The troubles, anything, it all stops with me,
Yeah.
and I'm there to make their world perfect. And that's what they pay me for. And so when you live off of that premise, okay, I bite the bullet on that. We own the wallpaper. All right, it goes into storage. One day we'll find a wonderful home and it'll be like, it belonged there, it never belonged here. Do you know what I'm saying? And don't fret about the
Right.
money. Yeah, it's a very expensive mistake, but don't fret about it.
Yeah.
It all works out. But what's proper is making sure the client is good. So again,
Yeah.
it's those experiences that drive me, to who I am and how I run my business. But like I said, I really keep things quite simple.
Yeah.
It's, I kind of have a funny little thing, keep it simple, stupid,
Right.
don't overcomplicate things. We have a very organized system. If you were to walk our office, it's beautiful. Everything has its place. You want to know about, molding and all the different molding, there's a box, you go there, so it's how you manage that says a lot about our, one's mind and how organized we are. And
That's true.
yeah, and the same goes for, when clients, one of my clients, he laughs because he's like, I just know the moment I ask you, you'll already send me something that you've already sent the email out and you're on it. But I just love to ask because I just know, like, you've already done it. I couldn't imagine if you were running my life. So thank God you run our homes.
Uh, and if you weren't doing what you were doing, like in an alternate universe, what would be your job if it wasn't this? Like
I'd be a chef. I would totally be a chef or a party planner. Yeah. No question.
and you mentioned your daughter because you have parties and you do dinner parties or birthday parties, and that's like fun for you.
Oh, I love it. You could tell me
Oh,
it's noon, and you could say, you know what, 20 people come tonight. I'm like, game on. Let's do this thing. Oh yeah.
oh,
Oh yeah.
that's awesome.
You know,
What
it's
was what was a favorite job of yours before design? Was there something fun? It could have been when you were 12 or 20, or that was just like, cool job. It's a funny thing that's in my bio.
no, nothing.
Okay. No
No,
scoop and ice
I can't say I have
cream.
any really fun like jobs. You know what they were? And one of the
What?
things I have one of my dear clients, you know, she sent her middle son to me because he wasn't sure what to do with his career, and he did kind of like design. And he called me and he said, "Hey Shelley, you know, can I come have lunch with you?" And I said, "Oh my God, of course! I'm so flattered you'd want to talk." And I told him, and it was funny because I was these are very, very successful people. Like we're not. I mean, I'm amazed at the way this family works. So the idea that their son came and spent time talking with me, and what I told him is, you're out of school, you want to get in design. You know what you do? You go to work for one of the best companies, and you learn about process. If I was starting my career over again, I'd go work for Ralph Lauren because that would teach me everything I need to know about design and the whole process. And I would stay there for 2 years and I would learn everything and I would grow as far as I can. And then at 2 years, I'd get out and I'd move on to the next company and I'd go learn a little something from them. And then I'd get out and I'd go learn. And never for the next 5 years do you think about money. You think solely about the educational experience of every one of those jobs. And so everything that I did, you know, back to kind of what you said, that I did as I was coming up was, you know, did I work as a hostess? Did I try as a waitress? You know, I've done so many different jobs. You know, when I went to college, I was cleaning boats at 4:30 in the morning. You know, it's like I've had to do a lot of different things, you know, to get to where I am and know what it means to work hard, but to always do your best. So, you know,
Yeah.
I've run the spectrum of so many different things, but I have been in design for a long time. I mean, since I was
Right.
30 years old, I've been designing product. I've had my own company. You know, I'm a long haul in this, you know, and before
Yes.
that, you know, I was just traveling the world. I was very curious about everything going on. And so it's, you know, but like I said, I think now if you're starting out, you know, people want to go out and they want to make all this money right away. It's like maybe that's going to work for a few people, but I would treat more, you know, I tell my daughter, you don't go to get to that first job because it's going to be your end all. You're just going there to learn. You're going for the experience. You know, it doesn't matter how meaningless you might think it is. It's going to be your hostess job. Hostess job is going to teach you about communication. And that
Yeah.
is a key factor in what's going on in society today because very few young people know how to look up and have a conversation. You know,
Right.
I can't tell
Right.
you how many, you know, kids that come over, they just can't look at you and talk. You know, they can't look at you in the eye. Like my daughter's
Yep.
going to meet you head on and she's going to have a conversation with you. You know, so it's like they all hear it somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was a hostess as a teenager, and to this day, it's like how to stay calm when there's people coming at you. The doors are open and it's the public, and most people are
And
going to
it's
be
rude.
sweet
And
as
it's a rude
pie.
person that's just suddenly nasty. And you're like,
Who's just
okay,
yeah,
I can
and
look
who's
at you
just
and I can get in a fight and be like, my God, you are an asshole. Or, you know, to be
right,
like,
right,
what do I need to do to try to make you happy? How do we change
right.
what's happening today for you?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy, but those are great experiences. And I thought you had, because it was interesting. I'm like, it makes sense that you came from humble beginnings. And it also made sense that you did a panoply of jobs, some of them
Yeah.
like bust ass scrubbing boats when it's still
Yeah.
dark out,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
I
So,
cycled through Western and Eastern Europe over 3,600 kilometers on a bike with panniers for 2 years. I know perseverance and patience, but I'm also
that,
very dedicated. When I'm like into something, that's it. You know,
yeah.
it's, yeah,
Well,
nothing scares
yeah.
me
That's what I see. I'm gonna have
except
to
for today's
watch this
economy.
over. Yes, yeah, no
And
doubt.
political environment. That one's like blowing my mind.
Right, right. And I wanted to thank you for saving the 87-year-old cottage on the beach. That's really admirable.
You have to
Wow.
come and visit us.
Yes. And your
Yeah.
dog, is it Bernice? Benoit?
No,
What's
he's
the,
an English white retriever who I thought
is
was
that
going to be,
big?
yeah, 75. I thought, oh, we're getting the 75, 80-pound dog. And then we're at the vet a couple years ago, and I'm like, what do you mean he's 120 pounds? Like, nobody told me I was getting the
Woo!
120-pound dog.
Dang, dang. So you probably have a special car that you transport him in.
Yeah. How do we transport that beast? We do have a big truck that my daughter
Okay.
now has. She inherited the truck.
Okay.
I have a fun little 356, and he does love to get in that little car and go for a drive. He's not happy when he finds out we're heading to the groomer, but he loves if we're heading to the office. But my life is very compact. I've built this cottage, and we take a beautiful little walk along the harbor and the boats, and we go to my office, which sits right on the water in the marina. So, I've got this really nice life. I have to drive to LA a couple times a week, and I'm with clients and I'm on job sites. But the moment I leave, I come back to a very quiet, fun life. And there's, like I said, friends, everybody's close by. And we moved into just someplace I didn't even think I would love. And I'm obsessed with it now. Obsessed. I'm obsessed with all the people we've gotten to know. I'm obsessed with the doors being open and everybody like riding up on their bikes and having drinks with us. And like, who knew? This is so
Yeah.
dang cool.
I'm glad, and it's I think we've all learned a lot from you, and it was just really great just approaching you, and you were just like, sure, in typical Shelley Starr fashion, you were like, sure, let's do it. I'm available. Like I was like, I knew she'd be like that. So you are in all ways. Thank you so much for joining us
You're
today.
welcome. And may I tell you, it's because of all your experiences that you know how to be a great interview and how you know how to handle and coordinate and take us through this. You have these exceptional traits as well. So,
Oh,
you should be really proud of all the experiences you've had because you make us comfortable. So,
oh, thank
again,
you.
this is that synergy of, it takes a wonderful host and interviewer to pull these things out of us, even if I am kind of a chatty gal.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Constance, thank you.